Understanding matrix routing is essential to understanding the DIVA. Matrix routing makes it possible for the DIVA to send any input, be it analog and/or digital, to any recording track and/or output bus. It also allows any of the front panel faders to control any input. Furthermore, any disc track or output bus can be displayed on any meter and routed to the headphones. The flexibility is incredible, but the implementation is remarkably straightforward. Let's take a look. Starting at the home screen, press Menu and then Disc Mix. It is helpful to think of this grid as a series of rows, which are horizontal, and columns, being vertical. In Disc Mix, each row represents a record track. Notice that there are 10 rows, which represents 10 record tracks on a standard DIVA, and 16 on a DIVA 16 represented on 2 pages. Let's keep that in mind now as we examine the columns. There are 10 columns labeled IN1, IN2, and so forth to IN8, which represent analog inputs, digital inputs, or even both. The DIVA slate mic and internally generated tone are the final 2 columns. Let's start by routing the slate mic to disc track 1 by pressing the box immediately below the slate to place an X. This X indicates that the slate mic is now routed to disc track 1. If we want to route slate to disc track 2, all we have to do is place an X connecting the slate to disc track 2. Note that the slate mic is special in that it is activated by pressing the slate button on the front of the DIVA. Next, we will route some of our audio sources to disc tracks. Let's assume that we are using an external mixer to accomplish all of our mixing, and we are not using any of the mixing functionality built into the DIVA. Press Preset to advance to Preset 3, which should contain no routings. The bottom row should read Analog and Pre-Fader. The following routing is commonly used with external analog mixers. Let's route Input 1 to Record Track 1 by placing a white A, meaning Analog Input Pre-Fader, under IN1, connecting it to disc track 1, which is the first row. Now, any audio signal entering input 1 will proceed to disc track 1 without regard to the DIVA's faders. Continue by placing a white A connecting input 2 to record track 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, and so forth, diagonally down to track 8. We have now routed all of the analog inputs to their own record tracks in that order. We will not route slate and tone in this menu because we are going to generate slate and tone using our external mixer. This is all the routing necessary if using the DIVA as a recorder only. The following routing is appropriate for use with an external mixer that is feeding the DIVA digital audio. Let's move to Preset 4 to further our understanding of matrix routing. Press Analog on the bottom row to change it to digital. Now, press the empty box routing Input 1 to disc track 1. Remember that digital inputs are on the side of the DIVA and are labeled AES-IN. Continue placing white Ds in a diagonal pattern until reaching track 8. We have now routed the 8 digital inputs to their correlating disc tracks. The significance of the Ds being white is that they are not affected by the DIVA's faders. The following routing is useful when using the DIVA's internal mixer. Advance to Preset 5, where we will create a typical over-the-shoulder or Mix-12 routing setup with a mono mix track and 3 microphone sources. Press the boxes on the lower row so the DIVA reads Analog In and Post Fader. Place a black A connecting Analog Input 1 Post Fader to disc track 1. Input 1 now goes through the DIVA's fader on the way to record track 1. If fader 1 is left at unity, the 3 o'clock position, then the routing will behave the same as if the fader were not in line. If we turn the fader counterclockwise, the audio signal decreases. If we turn the fader clockwise, the audio level increases. The audio level control is accomplished in the digital domain. Place a black A connecting input 2 to disk track 1. This A indicates analog input 2 is routed to disk track 1 as well. The black A once again indicates that the signal is fader dependent. Let's place a final black A connecting input 3 to disk track 1.